Have you ever stood at the edge of something new and felt absolutely paralyzed? Like your brain is screaming at you to move forward, but your body just won't cooperate. Like there's this invisible wall between where you are and where you need to be, and you have no idea how to break through it. That's fear. And if we're being honest, fear is one of the biggest things that keeps us stuck. Welcome back to Walking It Out, y'all. I'm your girl, Latrice Clark Jordan, and I'm so glad you're here for episode 2 because today we're talking about something I know all too well, taking the first step when you're afraid. And I want to start by being really vulnerable with you all because the truth is, I almost didn't even start this podcast. I almost let fear win because for months, maybe even years, I felt this pull, this nudge from God saying, "You have a story to tell. You have something to share. There are people who need to hear what you've been through." But every time I thought about actually doing it, about actually sitting down and recording, about putting my voice and my story out in the world, I froze. I mean, the questions came flooding in like, who am I to start a podcast? And what if no one listens? And what if people judge me? And what if I'm not good enough? And what if I say something wrong? And what if I fail? And would it make sense? And I'm not super famous. Nobody knows me. So starting this podcast was like, nah, I'll pass. And underneath all those questions was this deeper fear, the fear of being seen, the fear of being vulnerable, the fear of putting myself out there and being rejected, because that's a real thing. Rejection is a real thing. Because here's the thing about fear, it's really good at disguising itself as logic. It's really good at making you think you're being reasonable when really you're just being scared. Fear told me I needed to wait until I had it all figured out. Remember, I said that in the first episode? Like, I had to have it all figured out. And I actually was talking to my husband about that. Like, before I could actually say something to the world or get my voice out there, I had to have it all figured out. Like, until I had to have the perfect equipment, the perfect plan, the perfect message. Fear told me I needed to be further along in my journey before I could help anyone else. Fear even told me that if I couldn't do it perfectly, I shouldn't even do it at all. Does that sound familiar? Do you have those kinds of feelings of wanting to start something and then you self sabotage? Because that's me. That was me. But I just decided to get myself out there. But then I remembered something. I remembered all the other times in my life when I had to take a first step while being absolutely terrified. I remember that every single time God met me in that step. So let me take you back, way back, back in the time. So before the move to Georgia, before the marriage, before the kids, let me take you back to when I was like 17, 18 years old, standing in my aunt's house, packing up my life to move to Raleigh, North Carolina for college. Now, to understand why that moment was so significant, I need to give you some context. I was raised by my aunt, not my parents, my aunt. So that was like my father's sister. And she already had adult children when I came into her life as an elementary school kid on my way to middle school. I don't talk about this part of my story often but it shaped me in ways I'm still unpacking. Because when you're a kid being raised by someone else who already raised their kids, when you're coming into a family dynamic that's already established, you feel it, right? You feel like you're on the outside, like you're trying to fit into a space that wasn't really made for you. So I spent so much of my childhood and teenage years trying to figure out where I belonged, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be, trying to fit in with different people and different groups, hoping that somewhere and somehow I would find my place. But I never quit. Wait, actually, I never quite did. I always felt like I was performing. Like I was always trying on different versions of myself to see which one people would accept. And the exhausting part, none of them felt real. None of them felt like me because I didn't even know who me was. So when it came time to go to college, I was terrified, but I was also desperate, desperate to get out, desperate to find myself. This is real talk. Desperate to figure out who I was when I wasn't trying to fit into someone else's ideas of who I should be. I remember the day I left, right? I remember loading up the rental car with my dad and my stepmom, my bags packed with everything I owned, and them driving me down to Raleigh. And I actually remember this mix of emotions. Like I was super excited because I was going off to college and I was going to be on my own, but I was fearful because I was going to another state and I've never been away from home before. I felt hopeful because I was like, maybe I can figure life out if I was on my own, like technically on my own because I'm away from home. But I was dreading at the same time because I'm like, I gotta find friends or at least let friends find me or like be an extrovert when most of my high school life I was an introvert. All of that was swirling together in my chest, in my head, making it just difficult of a ride when it should have been such an exciting time for me going off to college. One of the first ones to go off to college. Because, like I said, I've never really been on my own before. And I never really had to figure out life without someone telling me what to do, where to go, who to be. And now I was about to be dropped off on a college campus where I didn't know a single person, where I had to have to make my own decisions and where I have to figure out my own identity. And that was terrifying. The first few weeks of college, because at the time I was a student athlete, so the first few weeks, nobody really was on campus but those of us who were athletes. And those were some lonely weeks. Like, classes hadn't started yet, so I was pretty much getting up super early, going to practice, eating lunch by myself or eating breakfast by myself because coming in as a freshman, the track team had already kind of like established themselves. So I'm coming in not knowing anybody, already feeling some kind of way because of what my last name represented to people. And I'll bring my cousin on for that episode so we can kind of explain the meaning of our last name and why it holds so much weight. But yeah, it was kinda tough, and I would just go back to the dorm room and just sit there and try to figure out life. I actually wondered, should I go back home? Like, I was like, "Am I even strong enough to do this?" I called my dad actually, and I called him sobbing, crying my eyes out, like I wanted to come home. And he's like, "I literally just dropped you off." But I was so just not with being away from home and just nobody was on campus, so that kinda probably played a part. I was like, "I just wanna come home." And he was like, "Let me tell you something." I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Let me tell you something. If you finish the semester and you still wanna come home, I'll come get you, and you won't have to go back. Just finish the semester." I was like, "Bet." 4 years later, I got a degree, so I didn't needless to say, I didn't go home. But anyway, I tried to make friends with my teammates. I tried to join the particular groups, like, during that time, it was, like, the we were in cross country season, so, the sprinters kinda ran with the sprinters, and the long distance people ran with the long distance people, so I tried to figure out what group I belonged in, so I tried to befriend people in those particular group. That didn't go very well. I tried to find my people, but that old pattern kicked in. That old pattern of trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be, of shape shifting to fit in, of losing myself in the process. And guess what, y'all? It didn't work because you can't build real connections when you're not being real yourself. You can't find your people when you're pretending to be someone else. You're not. And it took me a while to figure that out, like longer than I like to admit, actually. So, yeah. But it but eventually, I slowly started to let my guard down, and I mean, I do mean slowly, very slowly, and I started to show up as myself, and it was messy, it was uncertain, still figuring it out, but myself, and I was at the point where, like, you can take it or leave it, because this is me. I was not LCJ at the time, I was just LTC, and you know what? That's when things started to shift, like, I met one of my best friends to this day. We've been friends for over 20 years. And my line sisters, shout out to Gamma Xi Spring '01. Y'all know who y'all are. Um, Shout out to my Dom, my front. Always got your back. Anyway, so things started to shift. That's when I started to find real friendship, real community, and real belonging, meaning referencing my sorority, and not because I fit in to someone else's mold, but because I stopped trying to. And but here's what I want you to hear. That first step, that decision to leave home and to go to college, even though I was terrified, even though I didn't know who I was yet, that step changed everything because it put me on a path of discovery. It put me on a path of growth. It put me on a path of learning who God created me to be. And if I had let fear keep me home, if I had stayed in the familiarity of home because it felt safer, I would have missed out on so much. I would have missed out on the lessons, the growth, the relationships, the version of myself that I was becoming. And that's the thing about first steps. They're very scary. They're like super uncomfortable. They feel really risky, but they're also necessary because you can't get to where you're going if you never leave where you are. Let me say that again. You can't get to where you're going if you never leave where you are. Bars. So fast forward to 10 years ago. I'm standing in New Jersey, a single mother, like I told you in the first episode. So bringing it all together, facing another terrifying first step, the decision to leave my marriage and to move to Georgia, and all of the same fears came rushing back. What if I can't do this? What if I fail? What if I'm making a mistake? But I also remember that 18-year-old girl who got in the car and drove to Raleigh. I remember that she was scared too. And I remember that taking that step, even though it was hard, even though it was lonely at first, led to growth, led to discovery, led to becoming. So I took the step. I moved to Georgia, and yes, it was hard. Yes, there were moments I wanted to give up, but I also found myself again. I found my strength. I found my faith. I found my future. And now here I am again, facing another first step, starting this podcast. And honestly, I'm still scared. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like because I'm scared that I'm not qualified. Like, I'm scared that people will judge me. I'm scared that I'll fail. But I'm also remembering all the other first steps I've taken and all the other times fear tried to keep me stuck and all the times God met me when I moved anyway. So I'm doing it. I'm taking the step. I'm starting this podcast. I'm sharing my story, even though I'm afraid because I've learned that obedience doesn't wait for fear to go away. Obedience move in spite of your fear. And maybe that's where you are now. Maybe you're standing at the edge of something new, a new job, a new relationship, a new city, a new dream, a new version of yourself, and maybe you're terrified. So if that's you, I want to tell you something. Your fear is valid. It's real. It makes sense, but it doesn't get to make your decisions. You get to decide. You get to choose whether you're going to let fear keep you stuck or whether you're going to take the step anyway. And here's what I've learned about taking the first steps when you're afraid. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know the whole path. You don't even have to be perfectly prepared. You just have to take the next step, just the next one. I didn't know how the whole 4 years of college would go. I just knew I needed to get in the car and we needed to drive. And when I moved to Georgia, I didn't know I'd meet my husband and I didn't know I'd build a whole new life. I just knew I needed to pack the boxes and go. When I started this podcast, I didn't know if anyone would listen. I just knew I needed to hit record. That's all God asks of us, the next step, not the whole staircase, just the next step. And here's the beautiful thing. You take that step. When you move in obedience, even though you're scared, God meets you there. He doesn't always remove the fear. He doesn't always make it easy, but he shows up. He provides. He guides. He sustains. I think about the Israelites leaving Egypt. It's a story in the Bible, Exodus. They've been in slavery for generations. Even when God finally made a way for them to leave, they were terrified. They were walking in the unknown. They didn't even know where they were going. They didn't even know how they survived, but they took the step. They left, and God met them in the wilderness. He gave them manna. He gave them water from a rock. He gave them a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. He didn't give them the whole plan up front, but he gave them what they needed for each day, for each step. And that's what he does for us. When we take the step, even when we're afraid, he gives us what we need for that step. And then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. You get where I'm going with this? So if you're waiting for the fear to go away before you move, you might be waiting forever, honestly. Because fear doesn't usually go away until after you've done the thing you've said you were afraid of. And sometimes not even then. Sometimes fear just gets quieter, but it doesn't disappear. And that's okay. Because courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is doing it afraid. So what's your first step? Huh? What's the thing you've been putting off because you're scared? I was putting off this podcast because I was scared. So that was my thing. What's the dream you've been ignoring because you don't think you're ready? What's the move you've been avoiding because you can't see the whole path? Maybe it's going back to school. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's ending a relationship that's not healthy. Maybe it's having hard conversations. Maybe it's moving to a new city. Maybe it's pursuing a passion. Maybe it's just being honest about who you are and what you need. Whatever it is, I want to encourage you. Take the step. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be perfectly prepared. You just have to move. And when you do, God will meet you there. He'll give you what you need for that step, and then the next one, and then the next one. So move. I dare you. All right. So before I end this podcast, that's something I want you to think about. Where you are. Those questions I asked you. Think about those. And hit me up. Let me know what you came up with. So all right, y'all. I'm grateful once again. I took the step to start this podcast, even though I'm still scared, even though I still don't have it all figured out, because I know that there's someone out there who needs to hear this. Someone who's standing at the edge of their own first step, paralyzed by fear, wondering if they can do it. And I want you to know you can. You absolutely can. Not because you're perfect, not because you have it all together, but because God is with you and He's faithful and He'll meet you in the step. So here's to taking the first steps. Here's to doing it afraid. Here's to trusting God even when you can't see the whole path. And here's to becoming who we're meant to be, one brave step at a time. Thank you for being here. I love to hear from you. What's your first step? What are you afraid of? And what would it look like to take the first step anyway? Reach out and let me know. And until next time, keep walking it out, one step at a time. I'm your girl, Latrice Clark Jordan. And remember, have grace for yourself.